and welcome to the Room of Requirement. Today I'm going to be talking about the altar series, Communion and Stillness. This is part 2 of 4. So let's go ahead and dive right in. There is a silence that only becomes audible after seeking ends. It is not the silence of absence. It's the silence of presence. When you stop moving from door to door, when you stop reaching for keys, when you stop scanning the horizon for another threshold, something subtle shifts in the inner temple. The echo fades, the air settles, and the geometry of the space becomes clear. And at the center of that geometry stands the altar, not as an object, but as a point of convergence. Devotion is built, and stillness awakens it. At first, stillness feels empty. The mind, accustomed to movement, searches for stimulation. The body, accustomed to activation, anticipates the next revelation. But if you remain, if you continue tending the flame of discipline without demanding experience, the quality of silence changes. It becomes textured. It begins to feel inhabited, not crowded, inhabited, like entering a sanctuary at dawn, where light filters in quietly and dust moves through the air in soft currents, revealing patterns that were always present but never noticed. Communion is not a spectacle, it is resonance. It is the subtle alignment between your inner structure and something greater than your individual thought. It doesn't descend as thunder. It hums like a new low frequency beneath awareness. When your breath steadies, when your posture aligns, and when your nervous system softens into rhythm, you begin to sense it, a quiet reciprocity. Most seekers expect communion to be dramatic. They imagine visions, signs, overwhelming emotion, but the altar does not require spectacle. It requires steadiness, and the sacred does not shout in order to be known. It responds to coherence. When your inner architecture is stable, when foundation has been laid, when clutter has been cleared, when devotion has replaced negotiation, perception refines, and silence becomes communicative. The flame on the altar is not a literal fire. It is our attention. It is the disciplined act of returning to presence again and again and again until presence deepens. When you tend that flame daily, without asking for reward, something begins to glow back. The breath becomes fuller, the chest feels open rather than guarded, and the mind rests more easily between thoughts. There is a sense of being met, not by fantasy and not by imagination, but by depth. Communion is intimacy without performance. It is the experience of standing still long enough that you no longer need to prove progress. In that stillness, your will softens, your need to grasp dissolves, and what replaces it is awareness, steady, spacious, grounded. The geometry of your being aligns, the vertical axis of breath connects body and sky, and the horizontal axis of daily life stabilizes your actions. At the intersection is the altar, and that intersection is you. You begin to notice subtle shifts. Your reactions shorten, your speech slows. You feel less compelled to interpret silence. When you sit, you're not waiting for something to happen. You are allowing something to be revealed in its own time. Communion is not achieved. It's uncovered. It was always present beneath the noise of seeking. Inside the altar, offering changes form. You are no longer offering chaos or desperation. You are offering steadiness, and steadiness invites reciprocity. The more coherent you become, the more sensitive you become to alignment. You begin to feel when something disrupts your internal symmetry, not dramatically, but quietly. A slight distortion in breath, a subtle contraction in the chest, a tightening in thought. Communion sharpens awareness, not through mysticism, but through structural clarity. There is something deeply mystical about coherence. When your inner architecture holds, your perception deepens, and the ordinary becomes luminous. The sound of breath feels intentional, and the rhythm of your heartbeat feels sacred. The repetition of daily discipline feels less like effort and more like participation in something patterned and precise. The sacred geometry of the altar is simple. Presence meeting presence. Your disciplined attention meets a depth that doesn't fluctuate. Your offering of stillness meets a field of quiet stability, and over time you realize something profound. You are not alone inside your silence. This recognition is not emotional intoxication. It is grounded reassurance. It feels like being rooted, like standing at the center of a structure that no longer trembles. Communion reduces urgency. It softens comparison. It removes the need to chase intensity. Peace begins to expand, not as excitement, but as gravity. When communion stabilizes, your life reorganizes subtly. Decisions become clearer. Speech becomes measured. Actions become precise. And you're not acting from impulse, but from alignment. The altar does not demand dramatic sacrifice. It asks for daily consistency. And in that consistency, your perception refines until even the smallest moment carries weight. You realize that communion was never built about spectacle. It was about presence. The flame was never meant to blaze wildly. It was meant to burn steadily. The geometry was never meant to overwhelm you. It was meant to hold you. Inside the altar, silence is no longer empty space. It is inhabited depth. Breath is no longer automatic. It's an offering. And discipline is no longer obligation. It is reverence. And peace is no longer something pursued. It is something recognized. You are not summoning the sacred. You are aligning with it. And alignment feels less like thunder and more like resonance, steady, quiet, and undeniable. Communion stabilizes the flame, but one final tension remains: control. Even in stillness, even in presence, the will can subtly attempt to manage the sacred. In the next episode, we will step deeper into the altar and examine surrender, not as passivity, but as strength. We will explore how relinquishing control refines power, and how acceptance stabilizes authority, and why true alignment requires letting go of the need to direct everything. When devotion steadies and communion deepens, surrender becomes the final offering. Okay, you guys, thank you for sticking around. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. Stay tuned for the next episode. I appreciate you guys being here, and I'll see you next time.